Today on Ag News Daily.
Those pins on the Brandt machine will outlast the life of the disc. And that's the big concern with all the growers is pin wear, stuff like that. You will not see that on the Brandt.
Envita is a bacteria that establishes itself inside the plant cells. It's systemic, so it will grow as that plant grows. It will actually form a structure inside the cells. And what that does is it kind of gives you an alternative form of nitrogen that is not susceptible to leaching.
Welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. That kind of is starting to sound more natural, Delaney.
You practiced it.
Oh, yeah, like 6 or 8 weeks of this. Of course I've practiced that. I feel like we've got a lot of time to search for some good news because of how wet it's been.
Oh, my goodness. I don't think a lot of growers have gotten in the field. We'll touch on here a little bit. But...
Yeah, we don't have a lot of good news because rain continues through next week for most of the Midwest. But there could be a break after this recent siege of severe weather and outbreaks in the nation's heartland. The east will trend cooler with some stubborn showers in the earlier part of next week as well, but the northwest will see its warmest weather of the spring. But let's head to Brazil for some weather updates because they've had heavy rains which have caused widespread flooding in southern Brazilian state of Rio Grande do Sul. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
They are the second largest soybean producing state, and they have left hundreds of towns underwater, causing crop losses. The accumulated rainfall last week was over 31 inches, which is more, with more rain expected this week. At least 85 people have died, and the floods have about 150,000 of people displaced from their homes. Further heavy rains forecasted this week is expected to further exacerbate this situation within the region, and I'm sure that's having an effect on markets.
It certainly is, which we'll touch on here in a little bit, but just looking at some of those videos you've seen on TikTok and elsewhere, there's a lot of flooding, a lot of disaster that's going on there. But here in the heartland, of course, Tanner, with all this wet weather we've been having, it certainly has been slowing down planters. A few farmers I've talked to across the Midwest this week have reported anywhere from 2 to 5 inches of rain in the last week or so. As of May 5th, just 36% of the nation's corn crop has been planted, up from 27% last week, while just 25% of the U.S. soybean crop has been planted, up 18% from the week prior. The common factor I'm starting to hear from farmers noting weather issues is if this doesn't seem to be just in pockets where we've seen this in years prior, Tanner. It's really widespread compared to where we've seen maybe years prior. And yield loss is certainly top of mind for a few of those growers I've talked to, with the planting windows starting to shrink with a little more wet weather ahead over the next few weeks. But to wrap up this week's crop progress report, winter wheat is headed in 12 of the top 18 growing states, and 50% of that crop is now rated good to excellent.
Yeah, co-host Corey Hillebo said his planting progress went backwards this last week with having to replant some of those wet spots. We did get updates from the House Committee for Agriculture. Chairman Glenn Thompson released the following statement after sharing bipartisan policies and priorities to be included in the 2024 Farm Bill. So good to get some news there. This bill is a product of an extensive and transparent process, which included soliciting feedback from members of both political parties, input from across the nation, and some tough conversations. So it's good to see a lot of involvement there. Each title of this farm bill reflects a commitment to the American farmer and a viable pathway to funding those commitments. It is equally responsive to the politics of the 118th Congress. The American Farm Bureau Federation is encouraged to see that the proposals are in place. They acknowledge that programs for farmers and ranchers across the country to use and require additional investment to help in the face of falling commodity prices and, of course, increased inflation. The Committee on Agriculture will mark this bill up on May 23rd, and the hope is for a unanimous support for the endeavor to bring the stability to producers and protect the nation's food security and revitalize rural America. So a lot of positive things coming out of, hopefully, progress forward on the Farm Bill.
And it seems like Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow has had very similar sentiments, so hopefully it is smooth sailing for that Farm Bill. But this week, the World Food Prize announced 2 scientists as the 2024 World Food Prize Laureate winners. Dr. Jeffrey Houghton and Dr. Carrie Fowler were both instrumental scientists to create the world's backup vault of crop seeds to protect global food security. Today, that global seed vault holds more than 1.25 billion seed samples and more than 6,000 plant species. The pair will officially be honored at the 2024 World Food Prize this coming October in Des Moines, Iowa, Tanner. But what a fun story. In that photo of the seed bank, it's somewhere very cold, like in Siberia or...
I feel like I've watched the documentary, and it is a fascinating story. I can't believe they didn't get awarded that sooner. But there is a need for more information and research, and that was the catalyst for the work that Bayer crop science researchers have been implementing in their company field test plots this season. They are officially inoculating some of the company's existing hybrids with more than 100 pre-commercial hybrids having tar spot to evaluate the toleration of the disease. They want to understand tar spot better so they can deliver the best corn products to their farmers and help them manage the disease more efficiently in their fields. Research is underway in 3 states on 1-acre plots in 7 locations across Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin. The decision to artificially inoculate the corn in the field with tar spot has been made because Mother Nature hasn't cooperated with Bayer scientists in their previous efforts. In-field performance results are needed, and these in-field inoculations are important because Bayer's researchers have previously replicated tar spot only in a greenhouse, and that doesn't always correlate to how it can be observed in field conditions. The in-field results will be key to the battle going forward for farmers against tar spot. And I can only imagine what it took to get approval to do that, Delaney. That's risky business.
That's what I was just thinking. I'd be a little nervous if I were farmers in the area where those tests were being conducted. But Bayer also announced this week they have submitted a proposed label for their dicamba herbicide XtendiMax after the label was vacated earlier this year by the EPA. Bayer has now come back to the table with a label that has a few proposed changes, including a maximum of 2 applications with a June 12th application cutoff and no over-the-top application allowed for soybeans. So really seems they are pushing forward on trying to get this XtendiMax label in the works, Tanner. But taking a look at the latest H5N1 headlines this week, Colorado was the latest state to report confirmed infected dairy cattle. Following that, the state officials have not yet announced plans to modify livestock fairs or shows this summer in Colorado, but it doesn't sound like that's off the table, and that's something state officials are watching very closely to decide how to respond. There are now 9 states with confirmed cases, but those numbers are expected to continue going up. Meanwhile, in Michigan this week, their state of the emergency order went into effect, requiring Michigan farmers to abide by a variety of different rules, including negative tests, halting travel on positive tests for 30 days, and having a designated biosecurity officer on the farm. Michigan's Department of Agriculture stated this week that while it has not yet impacted the general Michigan population, this could take a real toll on the state's economy as well as its operations for supplying eggs and meat, as this is a big contributor to Michigan's state economy.
That's right, and I feel like all they have left to do to make this appear like COVID is put masks on those cows.
Oh, I don't even want to go down that path, Tanner.
Hey, another week has Machinery Pete highlighting the sale of a decade-old plus 4-wheel drive tractor that sold on an auction. The wave-making sale comes to us from online auctioneer Big Iron Auctions. During its weekly online auction last week, a 2012 Versatile 435 4-wheel drive tractor with just 3,400 hours brought a massive $147,750 winning bid. Machinery Pete says the sale confirms the trend that he's been seeing for 10-plus-year-old 4-wheel drives in whatever condition and whatever the hours are continuing to pull premium prices on the auction circuit. But Delaney, why is that? He says, despite their advanced age, they continue to get the job done on the farm without a lot of unnecessary bells and whistles. He doesn't expect this trend to change anytime soon. But speaking of things that might be different today versus in the past, Machinery Pete also shared the advice for some young generation farmers, first maybe or next generation, that are taking over their operation. His theory is the theory of opposites. He explains it's basically when everyone is running in one direction, you need to train yourself both mentally and then in the long term, getting yourself financially into a position so you can go the other direction. Be aggressive when everybody is pulling back and maybe pull back when everybody else is being aggressive. So quite interesting advice from Machinery Pete this week. But we've got some good advice coming to you from Tim Strahm of Brandt in our Speed Disc interview. So here we go. All right, now it's time to find out what's working in the world of tillage. My pleasure to have Tim Strahm here with Brandt to talk high-speed discs. This is certainly one of those things, Tim, that has been taking the ag industry by storm, high-speed tillage.
Yeah, high-speed discs, started, back in, probably about 7 years ago. First company on the market was another Canadian manufacturing Degelman. Then a company in the States got involved, and I started seeing some overseas shipments. Brandt is one of the last ones to come in the market, which has been good. They've seen what needs to be corrected and beefed up over the course of time. So I was with another company on the high-speed disc, and I'm sure enjoying the Brandt one. It's sure a well-built machine.
So how long have you been with Brandt?
Actually, yesterday it'd be 2 years.
Hey, well, congratulations. Yeah. Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you had a tillage background as well. So how long have you been working on agricultural tillage technology and tools?
Well, I started, in the high-speed disc side of it, I guess I've been in the ag business now going on 38 years. So my first 15 years was in the sugar beet industry. And so then, but no, the high-speed disc, the other company I worked for, we were just in the develop stage, and I did all the testing. This is what works, this is what doesn't work. So I'm pretty sure that's why Brandt wanted me to come on board with them. And
sure.
It was a good fit.
That's great. And these high-speed discs can be used spring or fall, correct? It really doesn't matter?
Yes, it does. They can be used both spring, fall. These units make a very nice seed bed, nice, smooth, level seed bed. There's been some testing done at the University of Iowa State University on the finishing product from a high-speed disc versus a field cultivator. You get a lot smoother seed hard pan underneath with a high-speed disc than you do a field cultivator. So, with today's new and improved planters with all the down pressures, it sure makes a lot of difference that you're just getting that nice level seed bed underneath.
Yeah, I actually was talking with Dave Whitaker, co-host of ours, and this is his first ever crop getting planted this year. And he was even toying around with his soil finisher, and I explained to him how important it is to have that consistency, not just on the surface, but throughout the entire pass, making sure that planter has optimal conditions to run it.
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, the worst thing when you're out trying to plant, you're going to plant your corn at 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches. You want to maintain that seed depth for even germination throughout the field. And I've had some guys that have bought the Brandt high-speed disc, and they'll run their high-speed disc. They're not convinced yet that this is, they want to keep their field cultivator too. So they're, some of these guys got a lot of acres. They need to cover some ground. So he ran the field cultivator and the high-speed disc across the road from each other. And we were actually 2 days early germination coming out of the high-speed disc.
Wow.
And 2 days means a lot.
It does. It certainly does, especially when our windows, it seems like, for quality weather, are getting smaller and smaller to make these passes happen. But that's one of the touts that Brandt puts out here, is that it's one of the most efficient residue management and seedbed preparation passes.
Yeah, it is. And, a lot of, you go back to, back in, 10, 15 years ago here, guys go out and harvest their corn, let the neighbor come in and bale it for corn stock, for cattle bedding and stuff. And, I keep trying to explain to them that that's some pretty profitable or pretty expensive material you're letting the neighbor have if you can put that back in your soil, just the nutrients that's in there.
Yeah, you're right there. So as we talk about the disc itself, on standard, what kind of horsepower do we need to pull one of these?
Well, you're going to need, that I always tell everybody 15 horse a foot, and that's going to vary in different areas you're at. If you're here in where I'm at, I'm sitting in West Fargo, North Dakota, in the Red River Valley, where it's as flat as flat could be. I can get by with that 15 horse a foot. You get out into parts of southern Minnesota, Iowa, let's say the Palouse country in Idaho, and I mean, you got hills, so now you're talking 20. So it's going to vary, but I've always had the standard of that 15 horse a foot running that 4 or 5 inches deep at 10 miles an hour.
I was going to ask you, how fast is optimal to pull it?
Well, 10 miles an hour is kind of the low point, because if I don't get that speed, I'll end up with disc ridging underneath. So if I get up to that 10 plus, then I'm going to shear that hard pan under and make that smoother. So 10 to 14, I've had them up to 17.
Sure. That, I was going to say, that would be an interesting ride in the cab of a tractor running 17 mile an hour.
It was in some nice flat bean stubble, so it went pretty good.
That would certainly be a story. So what kind of sizes are we looking at? How small do you go?
Well, we built 7 sizes. So we have a 16 to 21 footer, which is a 2-section unit. So we call them our bifolds.
Okay.
Then I go up into the 3-section unit, which I have a 26, a 31, a 38, a 41, and a 45.
Holy smokes. 45?
Yeah, 45, there again, that's, Western Canada, nice flat ground up there. I mean, you're going to need, and I guess you get out in those areas and they're not tilling that 4 or 5 inches deep. They're just trying to, prevent the little kochia from growing. And,
yep.
So it's, a couple inches of that. And, 45 takes a lot of horsepower.
Yeah.
The first year when we built the 45, not Brandt, but other companies, I'm going, there's nobody got enough horsepower to pull this thing.
Well, hey, down at Commodity Classic, John Deere unveiled a tractor that might be able to pull it the way it's designed to be pulled. That'd be kind of a fun marriage to see, get a trial going. So as Dave, is looking at what tillage practices, what practices in general that he wants to put here in his first crop, it's going to be quite interesting. I do know that he doesn't have a tractor big enough to pull your smallest version. So
okay.
If we get one for him to play with, I might have to lend him a tractor to run over. But
so hobby farmer.
That's correct. He's auctioneer. Yep. Just gets to play in the dirt for fun as far as that goes. But
nothing wrong with that. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I play in dirt for fun, and hopefully I sell some.
So what sets the disc apart from the competitors? What are things that Brandt's improved over those of the other?
Well, it's just the design, the weight of it. We're the heaviest one in the industry. We're right around that 1,000 pounds a foot. We do have wing down pressure, which the wing down pressure is going to avoid what we call the washboard effect. So I'm taking a little bit more weight and distributing out to the wings, so I'm not having so much weight on the center. So I'm getting that pressure out on the wings just to, that washboard effect there. So,
yeah. So go ahead.
Our pins, we use an induction chrome hardened pin with fiber bushing and wiper seals on each end. Those pins on the Brandt machine will outlast the life of the disc. And that's the big concern with all the growers is pin wear, stuff like that. You will not see that on the Brandt.
That's a good little extra bonus there to not have to worry about it at all.
Right.
How's supply going? Are you guys, if someone wants to order one, what's the lead time look like?
We are sitting really good. We got a lot of field inventory out there across the board on all of our products, but we do have some field inventory on discs. So if Farmer A wants to try one, here this spring, we could come up with one. We have them all sizes everywhere, 16 to 45 foot in the States here. So we're sitting pretty good.
That is, it's nice to hear. I know it hasn't always been that way over the most recent couple of years. So if someone does want to order, what's the best way for them to look up the product?
Just go out on our website and there's some videos out there and stuff like that. Get with your local dealer. They could take you into our company portal and show you some comparisons and stuff in there.
I like that. Yeah, Brandt.ca. And I got the high-speed disc page pulled up right now on the agriculture tab. Got a couple of videos and a lot of really good information out there for our listeners as well. So is there anything else you want to talk about to the disc before I send you off?
Well, I mean, like I said, this is, I've been in been in the high-speed disc since the inception of it. So I truly believe Brandt is one of the best built ones out there. And I've always said that in my line of business. I don't like to knock a competitor. I can sell what I have, and I think this is an easy sell compared to anybody else on the market.
Hey, that's perfect. And we like the advantages that the tillage tool can bring to our listeners here on Farm for Profit. So we appreciate you, Tim, taking time to share the information.
Tanner, this next interview could not be coming in a more timely period here as farmers are thinking about solutions maybe to enhance some of the potential yield loss they're seeing with delayed planting season and improve plant and soil health. Azotic Technologies Biological may be just the right solution.
Well, here we are today with Envita's Tom Tregunno, Global Business Development, to talk about how Envita fills the nitrogen gap for all of our crops throughout the growing season. Calling in from Ontario, or you didn't say Ontario. Where at in Canada are you at, Tom?
I'm actually I'm in Fergus, Ontario, Canada at the moment. Yeah.
That's right. See, I got to do a better job of paying attention. But that's why we've got you here, because you're the guy that's going to have all the information. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, pleasure to meet you guys. So I do global business development with Azotic. So that's the company that manufactures Envita. And what is that? Well, that's really looking at, how do we get this product to fit into various markets? How do we work on the agronomic development of a new product? How do we work on expanding new markets? So I've been with the company for just about 6 years and loving it. Just been a fantastic experience to work here.
I'm always intrigued by folks who get to travel across the pond and around the world to see how agriculture is, maybe different and the same in other parts of the world. Tom, as part of your role, you get to do a lot of traveling, it sounds like. What are you hearing from other growers as related to things like biologicals?
Yeah, really good question. And I think the key thing here is no matter where you are, whether different state, across the pond, you hear a lot of the same comments. Any new technology, whether you're introducing a new fungicide, a new herbicide, it boils down to ROI. The farmers are going to want to see a consistent ROI. They need to understand how these products fit. They got to be able to fit into their current production practices. And that's true whether you're in Iowa or in England or South America. You're going to have these same kind of challenges. The biological market, obviously, it's growing. There's a lot of new technologies coming out, and it's creating a lot of noise and confusion. And they're different, right? They're live bacteria. They're often live products, like is the case of ours. So sometimes there's things that we need to do a little differently to get them to work more consistently. And I think that's some of the learning curve that we've been experiencing over the last few decades, actually.
Yeah, a majority of our listeners are in the Corn Belt and have been seeing some significant amount of rain this spring, which of course is going to cause some concern. So why don't you tell us about Envita and how that might help growers in that area?
Absolutely. So what is Envita? So Envita is a bacteria that can be applied. Most guys are using it as a foliar application, or it can go on in furrow. What it can do is it establishes itself inside the plant cells. So it will grow, it's systemic, so it will grow as that plant grows. And it's the same process that rhizobia uses. So we grow soybeans, we're familiar with rhizobia. You see those nodules on the roots. This bacteria, which is called Gluconacetabacter diazotrophicus, which we call GD for short, it will actually form a structure inside the cell. So you can think of it as like millions of little nodules that are inside the plant cell. And what that does is it kind of gives you an alternative form of nitrogen that is not susceptible to leaching. That, by no means are we talking about the same kind of nitrogen supplied to the crop that rhizobia would do, but it certainly gets through some of the challenging points in the season. And, where do we see the best results? Actually, it's typically in years where nitrogen is limited, which makes sense. So either a really wet year where you've got a lot of loss, it just adds quite a bit of insurance. So you're getting just a constant supply that can get you, some nitrogen later in the season. That's when we start to see the effect. If you look on our website, if you look for pictures, things that is really clear is, the lower leaf burn where we've used Envita, where we haven't, the same fertility levels, you start to see the nitrogen, loss in the lower leaves, the symptoms of that. And we also see it quite a bit in the cobs when you look at tip back. So yeah, I suspect we're going to get a pretty good response this year with that kind of weather. So yeah, no, it's certainly another tool to look at.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it's great to use in wet years, because this year is certainly shaping up to be maybe similar to 2019 for some growers. I don't know. Hopefully not have as widespread flooding as we did that year. But you mentioned foliar application is the ideal time for this to go in the ground. Is this a liquid product, a dry product? Is it an in-furrow application?
For sure, yeah. So it's a liquid product. It's basically going on with your post-emergent herbicide, either in a early pre or a late post. So you can go, quite frankly, I mean, we've even done work up into tasseling if folks are using it with a fungicide. But so it's I guess the take home is very flexible. It will colonize that whole crop. The main benefit, of course, is seen later in the year when your nitrogen that you've applied is starting to run out. So that's when you start to notice the effect more so than early on. But you got a lot of different times to put it on. If it really, we talk about it fits your farm. So really, however system you want to use it, it has multiple ways of getting in. So just in an application standpoint, you just want to make sure it is a live bacteria. So we just recommend put it in the tank last, mix it up, and off you go. And, with that, with any, I mentioned earlier about, there's a lot of new products. A lot of folks are, don't always know how these products work. With our product, we have this offer where, folks want to try this out. We'll do a performance guarantee on it. So if you want to split a field, you add this, you spray out your untreated section, add this to the tank last, mix it up, spray it out. And if you don't see the response, then we'll cover you with new product again for the following year. And again, the intent there is to try this stuff over a few years just to see how it's working on your farm.
Well, that's going to be music to a lot of producers' ears. Just like you said, they don't have time for products that don't fit their current practices.
No, it's just never going to work. Yeah.
A little bit of a guarantee never hurts, especially if you don't have to make extra passes. But tell us a little bit more about Azotic Technologies and how this company is continuing to push the envelope for the future of agriculture.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so a bit of history on the bacteria itself and then our company. So the bacteria, actually, they discovered it in actually the late 80s, believe it or not, on sugarcane. So it's been, that's where they originally isolated this bacteria. It took quite a lot of time developing, well, how does it work? How can we select a strain that can colonize other species other than sugarcane? So that took quite a while. And then how do we get into a formulation that's stable, that you can put it on with your standard crop protection products? I mean, so that was a lot of development. The company itself was founded in 2012, and we were commercial in 2000. Our first trials were like broad farmer trials were in 2018. And we've been kind of growing since then. So, our focus has really been about how do we get this to work better? How do we increase our data set on different markets so we can understand what the return on investment is for different growers? What kind of application systems can we use? So it's been a lot of growth. And of course, a lot of the questions we get now is, well, how much nitrogen can I cut back? And that is a very tough one, right? We can't just, we generally look at it as a percentage. So if we have never looked at it as from a pounds per acre perspective. We've more or less looked at it as our trials were based on what is 100% fertility. So what's your state recommendation? And then let's cut that back to figure out what the point of equivalency is. Take home is the vast majority of guys are adding this on top of their program and using tools like Envita as an insurance to loss, like we're seeing this year. The relative cost of this product, the fact that you're not doing a separate pass. Folks like nitrogen; they like their fertilizer. I mean, it's not something they're going to want to comfortably cut back until they really understand how they work, and that's going to take time. It's going to take multiple years before we growers have the understanding or the experience and trust that these things, that they can confidently cut down a lot of nitrogen before they do that. So that's kind of what we've been working on these days, and lots to do. I mean, there's still more questions than answers at this point. They'll be brutally honest, and that's kind of where the performance guarantee comes in. It will not work every time. We know that. We recognize that there's going to be different weather that we haven't seen. It could be application. That's part of the reason why we want to share that risk with that grower and offer them new product if they don't get the response they need.
So Tom, you mentioned 2018, really you've been focused on grower adoption maybe since that point. Thinking about the US market specifically, what has grower adoption looked like? And has there been any commonalities as far as crops grown, acre size, anything like that?
Yeah, no, very good question. So our focus has been on corn for the vast majority of our data. The adoption tends to be anytime someone looks, they just do the small quantity, which they should. So typically early on, you're looking at 40 acre trial. They split some product for the untreated section. The good news is the amount of folks that have the performance guarantee claim versus their sales is relatively low. And the growth that you see in terms of the adoption tends to spike quite quickly. So we do see quite rapid growth and uptake at the grower level. But it's for us, it's more about just getting into new regions, right? So we've had a lot of success in say South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, but we're relatively new. We have in Ohio and Indiana, so there's a lot of growth yet to come from these products. I mean, from our perspective, the biggest market really is the untreated acre. Is the folks that really haven't had a look at any of these products yet, and making sure that everyone kind of understands how they work and where they may be a fit in their farm.
So if our listeners are thinking this might be a fit for their farm, how do they get a hold of it? How do they grab some product?
Yeah, so it's broadly available across the Midwest. So most of the major distributors have it. If they don't, so our line, talk to your retailer. The chances are they can certainly have access to it if they don't have inventory in stock. You can also reach us on our website at azotic.com, azotic.com, and we can, real simple tool, we can hook you up with a dealer in your area that has access to it. And we'll probably have some local data as well. We actually post all of our trial work on our website. So there's a map there. You can zoom in, see what it's been doing in your area, get an understanding of, how's it working in my state versus other regions, to give you a little bit of confidence as well.
That's good, Tom. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Just a reminder, we had Tom Tregunno, the Global Business Development Individual, here telling us about Envita. And a reminder to you listeners that this episode's brought to you by Envita, your solution for season-long nitrogen fixation when and where your crops need it. And that's exactly what you just got done telling us, Tom.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, it's always nice to get some of these interviews put together and learn right alongside you as a listener. So thanks for tuning in.
It is. But as we wrap up our show this week, markets have been a little crazy with a lot of fundamentals pushing things around as reports of freeze damage emerged from southern Russia, impacting this week's wheat markets. Of course, the continued widespread flooding in Brazil has created some significant challenges for growers in the southern hemisphere, and a nationwide labor strike in Argentina may be causing a short-term interruption on crush activity. However, all these fundamentals in the market didn't seem to do much to impact where traders were focused, as we have the May WASDE report dropping later here today, Tanner, after our recording. This May WASDE report is released on a very timely application here, as this is the first time we're going to see balance sheets for the new marketing year, the crop year that's about to be harvested later this year. Historically, the release of the May crop report does set the tone for the summer markets here, so this is going to be a pretty good indicator of where grains are going to be headed here the rest of this growing season.
That's right. And Josh Linville with StoneX provided a fresh update on the fertilizer market. Although heavy rain has pummeled a lot of the corn belt, these wet conditions across the Midwest are causing a delay in side dress applications. Linville shared with reporters that this delay will give the nitrogen market time to play catch up and make some logistical preparations before the next round of demand. What I think I missed, Delaney, and we should probably bring back every once in a while, is some more market commentary. Maybe one of these interviews on a Friday, we should bring in some of our old market analysts, have a catch-up conversation.
I think that might be a great idea, Tanner, but we certainly appreciate getting feedback from our listeners if they have other fresh ideas for us to implement on the Ag News Daily Weekly Show.
That's right. And don't forget, Sunday is Mother's Day. So if you have forgotten, like maybe some of the rest of us, here's your friendly reminder to go out and grab something or send a nice warm message to her. But I'd say for today, Delaney, it's time to let the listeners go.
Let's let them go.